Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Carvel Community Meeting. We are now meeting every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. It is part of our announcements that we'll get to in a moment, but if you're tuning in from home watching a recording and you've watched our previously recorded meetings, we were meeting every Monday, but now we are meeting every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. So we would love to have you join at our new time. It's an opportunity for you to listen in on what the team is working on, bring up any discussion topics to the team or anything you need help with from the Carvel team. We would love to have you join us. As a reminder, when you do attend these meetings, please read and abide by our code of conduct. Also, we ask that you put in your name and any organization that you represent within the attendee list. That's just to help us keep track of who's attending, making sure that we keep the lines of communications open and we're able to reach out at a later time and make sure we don't lose that contact with anybody from our community. And like I said, one of the announcements that we have today is we've been playing around with some different times and days for the community meetings, and we were doing office hours every other Thursday and community meetings every Monday. But now we've decided to move the community meetings to be every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. We're no longer having office hours, but the new format of the community meetings is also changing to allow for more time for discussion and anything that you may need help with. Previously, we were doing more of agile scrum discussion with backlog items, but now we're going to be focusing more on broader topics within the project roadmap and giving the community status updates on those particular items, and then discussing anything regarding the project itself. So hopefully with this new format, it allows for just more in-depth hands-on discussion and more high-level overview of what the project is up to. And with that, the next few announcements we have are a couple of releases. One of them being a pretty important release that the team has been working on for quite some time with the YTT schemas. And there's also a little bit of a bug fix within that. So does anyone from the team want to go over this particular release?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. So this is officially the GA of our schema feature for YTT. So this will basically enable you to provide a declarative way to state what values are accepted by your templates for YTT. So you can now declare a schema file that says what values are accepted and also what types for those values are accepted and the structure. So for the most part, those that are using data values right now can just slap a different annotation on their data values document, which is data values -schema. There are a few exceptions for array items. So I definitely recommend checking out the documentation in the release there, the how to use data values with schema. There's also a migration guide on our website. So if you're looking to take advantage of this feature, definitely take a look at the docs. They're updated, and also happy to hear any feedback in the Carvel Slack channel as you check this out and adopt it.
Great, thanks, Carrie. And then there's just this little bug fix. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so also as part of the 35.0 release, we did some automation to create the releases in an automated pipeline. As part of that, we realized that some of the generative files for the website were not being created properly. So because of some issues with that release process, the 30.50 release has some missing files for running the website locally. So this patch release 0.35.1 includes all the files needed to also run the website command. And there's more information in that issue there.
Cool, thanks, Carrie. Does anybody want to chime in with anything else regarding this release? Okay. Next up, we have image package 0.13.
Yeah, so I can talk about 0.13 and also 0.14, which was released the day after 0.13 was released. But 0.13 is this performance improvements when doing an image package pull. In order to determine if it's been relocated, we make less calls to the registry, which also means not only performance improvement, but you don't need to specify certain credentials anymore to have initial read access. So, and there's a bug fix as well when pushing or generating a lock file, it was actually specifying the wrong bundle image reference in the output lock file. So that's fixed. And then 0.14.0 essentially is just introducing a new flag. So if you're using image package against a slow registry, and the registry for some reason is returning back HTTP headers, it's taking a while to return back HTTP headers, you can set the response header timeout flag now to accommodate for that.
Well, thanks, Dennis. Okay, next thing we have is kapp-controller. This one's also a really big one that the team has been working on for several months. We have a demo scheduled also in this call to go over it. Who wants to take this release on to give an overview of what the community can expect from this?
I'm happy to give a brief overview of it. So for those who have been following along with kapp-controller since its inception, kapp-controller was mainly focused on the concept of continuous delivery via its app custom resource definition. But in this new release of kapp-controller, what you can expect are these new custom resource definitions that have been introduced that are meant to represent aspects of package management. For any additional information about the API definitions themselves, or actually going through the walkthroughs, we have quite a bit covered in the release notes there as far as how you can get started with these APIs and ultimately go through the concepts of authoring packages and consuming packages, which we'll highlight a little bit in the demo today. But the big idea here is that we're going to have these Kubernetes custom resource definitions that allow you to encapsulate software as these package custom resources in a very versioned and stable manner. And we're going to have ways for people to very easily install and configure the underlying software that's been released by these packaging concepts so that it can ease the process by which you actually install things and deploy things out to your cluster in a very version stable manner. So if there's any additional feedback for this release, we'd of course love to hear more on it, and we'll highlight a little bit more in the demo.
Great, thank you so much. Next up, we have status updates regarding the project roadmap.
Yeah, I can speak to these. So as we kind of just went through, we accomplished a couple big milestones already this month with the YTT schemas and the kapp-controller package management APIs. So those are definitely two big things that we've had in flight for a bit. Things that are coming up, on the kapp-controller side, we have private registry authentication, basically just allowing the ability to use private registries. Right now, it's restricted to public registry usage. Oh, I should have the regular disclaimer that these are all subject to change, but this is the plan for now. We also have some work coming up in YTT, allowing you to export YTT schema as open API schema as a way to just provide better compatibility with tools that use the open API notation. Then there's a general kind of Carvel-wide, I guess, like initiative that has been somewhat in flight, and just wanted to call it out here as a way to surface that it's ongoing work. And even though the timeline says August, that's mainly just to show that I know we plan to continue to invest in just bringing the general project healthiness up and iterating on the documentation. This really never ends, but we are just putting in a bit of a more concerted effort in the near-term future just to raise that minimum threshold. And then beyond that, there's certainly more kapp-controller, I would call them enhancements that are TBD. But since we just released those package management APIs, we expect to learn quite a bit. So just kind of penciled in, some work upcoming there. And then we get into the future further on, which I don't think we need to dive into yet. But if you have any questions or are curious, please follow those links to learn more. I guess any questions from folks on the call right now about any of this? Cool.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. So next we have the package management API intro, the demo for the release regarding kapp-controller. I will stop sharing my screen.
Cool. So yeah, up to this point, our discussions about packaging stuff have been very hand-wavy and descriptive instead of concrete with actual examples. So Dan and I threw together a little demo to hopefully solidify everyone's understanding of how it works, what it's doing, and hopefully show some of the value in it. We split it up into sort of two sections where I'll be showing the package author side. So I'll be writing a package, publishing it in a package repository and putting that into an OCI registry. And then Daniel will sort of take the role of a package consumer who wants to install this package onto their cluster. So I will start sharing my screen and get to package authoring. Can everyone see? Is the font size good? Should I bump it up?
You could honestly bump it just a little bigger.
Okay. How's that?
That's lovely, thank you.
Okay. Cool. So to orient ourselves, since I'm taking the role of a package author, I would be somebody that has an application that I want to publish in a way that anybody that wants to install my application doesn't need to know any of the intimate details about what kind of templates I'm using, like where specific versions of my manifests are stored, what specific deployment tool to use. So all that to say, I'm starting with an app. And it's pretty simple. It's got a service and a deployment, and just prints out a little hello message when somebody connects to it connects to the service. And then it has some configurable values, so you can configure what port the service will listen on, and then you can also configure part of the hello message that will be displayed to users. So in order to package this up, I need to first create what's called a package contents bundle. So for this, we're using an image package bundle. It will store our application configuration and any references to images used by that application. In this case, the Kate simple app Docker image. So I'll start by sort of creating that directory structure for that file or directory or bundle. And then moving over my manifests to that directory. So now if we take a look at package contents, you can see we've got this config directory where our config is stored. And then since this is an image package bundle, we also need some of the image package metadata files in the .image package directory. So I'll make that and also populate them. And to do this, we want to populate the images YAML with references to images used by our application config. So we'll run the config directory through kbuild, which will pull out any image references present in the deployments or any other resources it finds. And it will output this image lock file into the images.yaml. So running that, we can then take a look at what that output looks like. And you can see here we have a record that this bundle references the Kate simple app Docker image. So now whenever somebody moves this bundle around, image package will be smart enough to also copy any Docker images it relies on as well. And now that all of that is where it needs to be, we can just push this up into our registry as demo app version 1.0.0. So now that our application is packaged up into this contents bundle and stored in a registry, we now need to create the CRs that instruct kapp-controller where to fetch manifests from, how to template them, and how to install them, so that users don't need to know any of that information. So we'll start with creating what's called a package metadata file at metadata.yaml. And this file just acts as sort of a high-level view of what the package is. None of this information is versioned. It's sort of like a GitHub README in that it just lays out what the package is, what it does, like some descriptions and categories you could find it under. And for this demo, we'll be calling our package demoapp.carvel.dev. It's good to sort of namespace with a fully qualified name so that if two people publish their own versions of the same package like Prometheus, it's distinguished and there's no collisions. As you can see, we've got a display name. So this is a more human-friendly name for the package, and then some high-level descriptions in the categories. There are also some other metadata fields in the docs that can be filled out, like logos, maintainers, etc., just for more info. And once we have that, we can create our the other CR, which is our package definition, our versioned package definition. So that is what this looks like. So we've got our name, which is just a combination of the package name and which version this specific definition is for. Some release notes, and then a value schema. And it's important to note that this is for informational purposes only. So this is a way for package authors to convey to consumers what are the configurable values you can pass into this package. It can be consumed by like UIs in order to create a richer experience with configuration input, or just consumed in this state by people using kubectl. And as we saw earlier, we've got two values that can be configured: a service port, which is an integer and defaults to 80, and a hello message, which is a string and defaults to stranger. If you did want your schema to actually do validations, you would have to include it down here in the templating steps as either like a YTT schema or a JSON schema for Helm templating steps. And then as we get down to the actual package definition, where it instructs kapp-controller like where to fetch the configuration from. So here we're using that package contents bundle we just pushed that stores all of our configuration. We're telling kapp-controller that you then need to template it using YTT, which will render all of our manifests, run it through kbuild to sort of replace any image references that may have changed throughout the relocation process, and then deploy it finally using kapp. So with this definition, users won't have to know about any of this. They can just create a CR, as you'll see in a bit. So once we write that, we now need to move this package into a package repository, which is a image package bundle, again, which stores a collection of different packages. So we'll start the similar process as before, where we'll create all the directories we need. The .image package directory again to store some metadata, as well as this packages directory with our package name. And then we can look at what the final looks like here. And our recommendation is for each package you have stored in the repository, you give it its own directory, and then put any versions or metadata into that directory. So sticking to that, we will copy over those two files that we just made. Let's actually move them into the demo app carvel.dev directory. And if we look again, we can see now we've got version 1 of that package, as well as the metadata stored in the repository. Now we also need to make sure that the package repository is able to reference all the package content bundles that we previously created, so that the fetch stages of the package are able to succeed. So we'll again create this images lock file inside of the package repository. And if we look at this again, we see that we now have a reference to that demo app package contents bundle that we had created at the start of the demo. And then finally, we can push this repository to an OCI registry. And we can then share this digest with anybody that would like to consume our packages. In this case, Daniel.
So as Eli has kind of touched on in the first portion of this demo, what kapp-controller allows us to do is basically capture not only the configuration, the associated images at every level that you're sort of deploying here, right? Like we resolve the container images in our manifest to their digest format, and the image package bundles themselves for packages are resolved to this digest format. We have a lot of stability in the way that we're able to take the configuration, the images, and the process by which we would deploy out to a Kubernetes cluster through a lot of the concepts that we've introduced through kapp-controller and through the Carvel tool suite that helps us build up these packages. What we now want to do from a consumption standpoint is we want to go through this process of how do we take this software and how do we actually get it running on our cluster. And the first step that we would take as far as beginning this journey of actually having something run is that we want a really simple way to actually introduce our packages onto our cluster so that they can be easily discovered by developers working against this Kubernetes cluster. So in my particular case, I'm going to use kapp-controller's package repository concept and use the image package bundle that Eli just pushed, which contains the package definition that he just created for the piece of software that someone might want to deploy on a cluster. So our expectation here is when I create this package repository, what I should see is that I have packages available on my cluster. So in order to do that, I'm going to come out to my terminal and I'm going to really quickly run this command here with kapp. And so what we should expect after we run this is that this package repository called simple package repository is going to be created in my default namespace. And what I should see is that the package that Eli just created is now discoverable on my cluster such that people can view the package and decide whether or not it's something that they want to install. So if I go ahead and click yes here, we get this confirmation message just basically saying that the package repository is being created. And if I just create a quick watch here, what we should be able to see is that the package repository is in this state of reconciliation. And basically what that means is that this package repository is a request to kapp-controller to basically go ahead and take everything that's in the image package bundle definition associated with it and create those packages on my cluster. So now that it's in this reconcile succeeded stage, what we should be able to see is that these packages are now available to actually be installed. So if I do a Control-C here, and then I just do a k-get packages, what we see is that I have this package definition that Eli just created, but it's now actually living on my cluster in such a way that it's easy to find. We can see that the actual version of it is 1.0. And so this we can expect to be the 1.0 version that Eli just created. The next thing that we'd want to do as far as this process of discovering packages is figure out what are some configurable aspects of this package. So if I go ahead and just take a quick look at the package definition, what I can see is the value schema here and the properties that are associated with it. So from my perspective as a consumer, I'm using this value I can configure. And one of the properties that looks interesting to me is this hello message property. So the description of it says name used in hello message from app when app is pinged. So my expectation here is that this package is creating an app and that this value that's specified here is what the response from the application will be. And I see that the default is stranger. So that looks good to me from the perspective of what I expect when I install this package. So after looking over this package definition and seeing what is it that I'm going to install, the next process is I want to select what package I want to install and what version of that package I want to install. And that can be accomplished through a kapp-controller custom resource called a package install. So this is basically a request that can be made to kapp-controller to specify what package you want that's available on the cluster and to have it actually deployed out to a particular namespace on your cluster, and then what version of that package. You'll also see some commented out information here, and we'll discuss that a little bit later in the demo. But for now, what you can focus on is the spec of the package install, which defines a service account name. So you'll notice here that this service account name is needed for the package install because we are actually going to create resources on our cluster that are defined in the package itself, which, if you'll remember back to the beginning of our demo, was the deployment and the service associated with this package. So we're basically defining the appropriate level of RBAC that this package install needs to have to create things on our cluster. The other portion of the spec here that we have is that we have a package reference. So this is a way to choose what package you want to install and the particular version. So we're going to select demo app carvel.dev, and then we're going to, under the version selection constraints, select that we want version 1.0. And this should correspond to what we already have on our cluster. So if I come back out to the terminal now, and I'll just do a quick kapp-controller get all here, just show we don't have anything in our namespace currently, but after we create our package install with kapp, we should expect to see that we have our deployment and our service running that's associated with our package. So if I go ahead and confirm that I want to create this package install, I get this confirmation that the package install has been created. And if I go out now, I can see some basic information about the package install itself. And if you're confused by package I there, it's just basically a shorthand of saying package install with kapp-control. So I see that I have a package install created called package demo. It corresponds to the correct package name and the version that we expect. And now if I do a kapp-control get all again, I have this deployment, I have this pod created, and I also have an associated service. So the last thing that we'd maybe want to check is to see if that hello message has that default value of stranger when we ping it. And the easiest way that we can do that is by setting up a port forward here. And if we just do a curl localhost on port 3000, I get back this confirmation message here that says, hello, stranger. So we've been able to, through this request of a package install, actually have this software running on our cluster that's defined by this package definition. But one thing we also mentioned is that this package install is this way to configure these values. So one thing that we can do here is using this uncomment this portion of the YAML here and say that we also want to create a Kubernetes secret as part of the process of creating our package install. And we actually want to reference this secret in our package install under this values section. And within the secret, we can basically say that this hello message, I want to change it to Carvel community. So we should expect here that when we recreate this package install or update it, what will happen is we'll get a different response back from the application that's been deployed. So coming back out here, if I now go ahead and rerun this command to create the package install, you'll see that we have this update that's going to take place for the package install, and we're going to create the secret. I'll go ahead and create this now, and we'll just make sure to see that it finishes reconciling and picks up our update. So there it's gone through, and we can see that everything should be running successfully now. So if I come back and I do my port forward again, my expectation is that I get this hello Carvel community message back. So one of the things that we can do here is not only highlight a lot of the aspects of, the configuration and how we deploy things out to our cluster, we can also make it really simple to configure these values in such a way that's useful for end users to not have to think about all the details about what is being deployed and how we're going to deploy something. So this concludes our demo from a package author and package consumption standpoint and learning about these package management APIs that kapp-controller introduces. For anyone who is interested in more information on the work that we're doing on kapp-controller, we have this whole website here, and it's got tons of information on kapp-controller that should give you some basics of the continuous delivery and package management features that kapp-controller offers. We also, for anyone interested, have more hands-on information like our terminology and APIs that basically goes through all of the resources that kapp-controller introduces. You can go through the flow that Eli introduced of authoring packages, or if you're just a big fan of me, like not having to know all the details and just installing stuff easily, package consumption is probably a good workflow for you to check out as well. So with that, I will go ahead and kick it back over for the rest of the community meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Daniel, and thanks, Eli. Congrats on the release and really excellent demo. Really appreciate you providing that today. Does the team have anything that they wish to share?
I have a question, but like, that was really cool. I have a question for the package author, Eli, and I notice whenever we have an image reference or a bundle reference, we always use a digest, except in the package CR in the 1.00 YAML file. If you share your screen, I think I saw it on that file where the test app, the bundle that represents the test app assets, we used a tag instead of a digest in that file. I was just more wondering, was that something that's recommended? Is that to help with upgrading that application bundle? Yeah, I was just more I'm wondering about why we didn't use a digest in that scenario. 1.0, if I'm remembering it correctly as well. Yeah, that thing.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. So this is like an easier way for folks to develop their stuff and author these things. Like, it's easier for me to just know, oh, I've published this package contents bundle for V1 and I tagged it 1.0.0. Luckily, we run everything through kbuild before we run it through kbuild in order to record the image references. So there it gets resolved to a digest. So the only image that will be moved along with this repository is the actual digest reference. And then on the flip side, when we're installing packages into the cluster from a repository, we also run them through kbuild again, which will then take any digest references from the repository images lock and replace them in the package definitions. So I think maybe Daniel could show that by the time this package gets into the cluster, it actually is a digest reference. It's just easier on folks working with these references that don't have the system dealing with them to use tags and stuff like that. But at every point at any point they get used, there'll be digest references. Does that make sense?
That helps. And so like, suppose we create a bundle for this, and before we kind of do an image package copy, running it through kbuild to get the digest, suppose somebody updates 1.00 to another digest, like eventually down the line, we might get can't find this image because it didn't get copied across with an image package copy bundle.
Well, by the time we have it in our images lock, we know that 1.0 corresponds to this digest. So whenever image package does the copy, it'll copy this specific image. And then that's the image you're going to have anytime kbuild does another replacement.
Yeah, that helps. Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other questions about it? Demo?
All right, moving on back to the agenda. So we have two discussion topics here. First one is, what if we use linter technology to enforce GoDocs for new exported symbols? POC for kapp-controller. Whoever put this in wants to get some more.
Sure. And so I think, can we actually, Nancy, can we do like can we go back to gallery view real quick? Because I'm a little curious on, can I get like a, yes, I know exactly what GoDoc is. No, this is unfamiliar and we should really talk about it in detail. 3, 2, 1, yes, I know what it is, or I want to hear a lot about it. Okay, so thanks. Then I guess I'll share my screen if that's okay, and I'll talk about what it is real quick. So maybe something that's familiar to some of you is like JavaDoc or well, anyways, other automated documentation systems. And so what what GoDoc does is it actually like it auto generates documents that look like the whatever the ones that you find here. So these can all be auto generated by putting comments in your code, and those comments might be a little bit verbose, so there is like a signal to noise ratio. GoDoc should not be confused with the children's book Go Dog Go. My mom can tell you some embarrassing stories about how long I spent sounding out each word of Go Dog Go, but despite their obvious similarities, so I made a demo here of exactly what this linter would do. So here you can see this linter has run against a change I made. I made an unused, undocumented exported struct. You can see that it complains that this exported type should have a comment or be unexported. A separate linter complained that this private field is completely unused. And so here's an example where in this function that I added, I did put the comment. And so the GoDoc convention is that whatever the symbol you're exporting should also be the first word of the GoDoc comment. And then just as I was showing, you would, that's how you get, this. So like, oh shucks, this is not the best example. I could have, anyways, there's a comment above this function that starts with //func defines a flag with so it would, it turns exactly this comment. And GoDoc, in contrast to JavaDoc and some other tools, GoDoc does not require you to also exhaustively document each parameter or if there was return value. So that's still a little bit up to you. And I think that can help decrease the noise. So if parameters are obvious or you hope that they're obvious, then you don't have to exhaustively document them. But anyways, so hopefully this example provides a little bit of clarity. And the other thing I would point out, you can see that it's complaining about these functions and structs that I've added, but it's not complaining about this old code that was already here. So everything that predates this change is grandfathered in. This would let us ratchet up our commenting and documentation game without having to do some exhaustive pass where we go through. So okay, that's what it is. What I'm thinking of, I guess. In conclusion, the sales pitch is, hey, I haven't even met all of you. I'm new, and I would love a code base with better documentation. So I'm trying to, enforce the change I want to see in the world. But the end, happy to open it up for discussion.
Yeah, I guess one piece of this that I'm certainly in support of is that it will help ease the ramp up or onboarding to new code bases. I know that we've had comments, I think, in the past of either it's difficult to know at a high level, like without reading into the actual contents of a function, like what might be going on. So generally, I'm pro comments, but I also know that's a very, well, depending, it can be a contentious topic.
I have kind of a clarifying question. So this linter will kind of enforce these rules. Does it also generate the docs, or is that like next steps?
No, I think, and I would even argue that the level of documentation that could be auto-generated is often not the level of documentation that I find the most helpful. So I think one could, right, if we wanted to go back and retroactively decorate many things in one swoop, you know, take your scripting language of choice and have at it. But I think often it's the insight that a human who knows the system can provide is the valuable piece, in my opinion.
I think one piece to add there is you can generate the GoDocs locally on like a local server. So like you could run, I think, the GoDoc command, and then it would generate kind of like the, you know, like the Go website has. But
Oh, sorry, did I misunderstand the question? That's the flip side. Like, yeah, there's a command that serves it. Yeah, I apologize.
That clarifies things. It's mostly for humans to read is kind of what I'm understanding now. Cool.
A big curious about thoughts around, are we thinking of maybe making that GoDoc webpage like more public? I just noticed that we've had questions in the past where people asked, hey, can we just consume, you know, your project as a Go library, say? And that just opens up a different kind of consumer API to our users, where we're telling people, no, use the binary. If we have a documentation page that has all the functions publicly, you know, documented, it might communicate that, yeah, this is another API. People could maybe use our thing as a Go package. It's just a thought that came to my mind.
Any other questions or comments on this particular topic?
I guess just to respond to Dennis, I think so far we've been recommending that people would shell out to the binaries themselves versus using the code as like Go libraries. Someone else can please correct me if I'm wrong there. So yeah, that would, I think, be another consideration we would have to keep in mind if we wanted to go that route and like publicly host the GoDoc documentation. But it might just be an area that we haven't really explored or really defined yet.
Yeah, it might be like, you know, look, FYI, like if you use it as a Go package, we may not be able to support that. Any issues you may run into, you know, we don't provide any backwards compatibility, at least on certain code bases for certain functions. So if you use it and depend on it, it might break on you somewhere in bold letters or something like that communicates that. I don't know.
Well, I definitely see that this would add like more resources for people who are new to the code base. And I think that's something that we want to optimize for on this project, given that like we're actively hiring and we want support from the community. So like, I think it's a great idea. I'd like to see everybody on the team on board with it, like, because it will be something that we'll not have to like maintain these comments and make sure that they don't get out of date. So I think that's an important aspect to it, but like, I think it's a great idea.
So I'll add briefly that I did run this past Dimitri before I started prototyping, and he gave it a sort of grudging, like, yeah, it might be time to do this. And similarly, John Ryan before his vacation gave it, yeah, why don't you ask around and see if there's a is the reason we're not doing this already just because we're not doing it already, or is there actual resistance? And I think the answer that I'm hearing is there's not. I'm not hearing anyone say, oh, I don't want to maintain that, but I'm hearing, let's make sure we're all ready to maintain that. Is that fair? So maybe as a step forward, I'll merge this into kapp-controller, and we'll start there for a few weeks, and I'll put this back on the agenda sometime in August. Does that sound like a reasonable path to everybody? Okay, thanks y'all. Back to you, Nancy. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Joe. Okay. Looks like the next topic we have is issued triage. We have about 7 minutes left. Keeping some track of time.
Yeah, for this one, I don't think we need to get into it necessarily, the actual content. I more so just wanted to bring awareness to this currently drafted PR, but trying to capture our issue triage process just to make it, generally more visible, more discoverable as we bring people on board, try and transfer more of this context. So my primary ask is for folks to take a look at the formatted markdown version. It's going to be easier to read. But if you just wanted to take a perusal, see if things make sense, there are a number of assumptions being made here, so feel free to question things. Things like the maintainer's markdown file, that's something that jumps out to me just right now. Like, we don't actually have that file in all repos or many repos right now, but it's with the assumption that we will do that as we continue to improve our general project health practices. So yeah, there's also some thoughts in there about ways we can also categorize things by kind of changing our labeling system in some way by using an example would be like a category / specific item. So it could be like priority /0. It's like it's a priority 0 thing, or it could be a kind / bug, kind / enhancement. So there are just like general ideas, and I just wanted this to kind of kickstart a conversation and get folks thinking about this, but do so publicly so we can, just kind of hash out what sort of agreements we want to put in place as a team.
One of the comments that came to mind was maintainers are listed in the maintainers file for each repo. I think for Carvel, my suggestion would be to have just the one centralized maintainers file in the Carvel repo, and then just link out to that file within each of the repos, so we don't have to maintain 15 different maintainers files. It's just all one. It's all centralized.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a great topic to discuss. I can think of pros and cons for both sides, but yeah, I think that's a great thing that we should dig into a bit. But cool.
Anybody have any comments on that? Or do you want to just table?
Would this be a topic that we would want to have in a comment on this PR? That'd be a good place for discussion.
That's kind of what I was thinking, just because we are short on time, and I want to make sure that we end on time. But yeah, please check it out, add comments, and I'll just kind of check in on this, and nudge things along on a weekly basis. No real sense of urgency to get this done, but it would just be nice to have this general agreement. And it is largely inspired by Kubernetes triage process. So between Kubernetes triage process and then what we were just already doing more organically as a team.
Cool. Thanks, Aaron, for putting this together. Yeah, and if you're watching this from home and you're looking this over and you want to provide some feedback, please do so within the PR, or you can even find us on Slack in the Kubernetes Slack workspace within the Carvel channel. We're happy to have discussion there as well. We have 2 minutes left. Is there anything that the team wants to bring up before we depart? Nope. Okay.
Sorry, one thing I'll add for anyone watching, if you have feedback on this new format of community meeting, please let us know whether it's better, worse, what you liked, what you didn't like. It would be great to get some insight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Aaron. So with that, we do hope that you're able to meet with us at our next meeting. Again, we're now meeting every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time for our community meetings. We are no longer having our office hours. The new format lends itself to having more time for those discussion topics and more in-depth items. That's what we're hoping for. And it seems like this first meeting allowed for that. So we encourage you to attend the meetings. If you have feedback, please provide that in all the different areas that we have available. And yeah, we hope to see you at one of the meetings coming up soon. And with that, thank you. Have a good day.